Jason had $847 in his savings account the day his car broke down. The repair bill came to $1,100. He didn't have it. So he put it on a credit card at 24% interest, paid the minimum for 6 months. And by the time the balance was gone, he'd paid $1,340 for a $1,100 repair. The car got fixed. His financial situation got worse. Now, here's the version of that story with one small difference. Jason has $1,200 in savings instead of $847. The car breaks down. He pays the bill. He's annoyed for a weekend. Monday morning, he starts rebuilding the account. Nothing else changes. Same job, same salary, same car, same repair bill. Completely different outcome. That $353 difference didn't just cover the gap, it changed the entire trajectory of what happened next. And that's what this video is about. The invisible line between those two versions of Jason and why crossing it changes things in ways that have nothing to do with the math. My name is Nick, and I spend way too much time thinking about why some people seem to build wealth almost effortlessly while others stay stuck in the same financial patterns for years, regardless of how hard they work or how much they earn. And the more I've watched this play out, the more I keep coming back to one number, $1,000. Not because it's magic, but because of what it represents and what it triggers. Before we go anywhere, I'm not a financial advisor, and this isn't financial advice. This is a pattern I've watched repeat itself enough times that it stopped feeling like coincidence. Your situation is your own. Keep that in mind as we go. And hold on to one idea, because I'll come back to it at the end. The $1,000 isn't the destination. It's the proof of something much more important. Remember that. Let's start with what's actually happening when someone doesn't have $1,000. Financial researchers have studied this extensively, and the findings are uncomfortable. When people operate without a financial buffer, their decision-making changes at a neurological level. Studies out of Princeton found that financial scarcity consumes cognitive bandwidth the same way a demanding mental task does. Your brain is running a background process constantly, managing the gap between what's coming in and what needs to go out, calculating risks, anticipating shortfalls, managing anxiety. This background process doesn't pause when you need to make a good decision. It runs alongside everything else you're doing, and it costs you. Researchers estimated the cognitive drain of financial scarcity is equivalent to losing about 13 IQ points. Not permanently, but situationally, in the moments when clear thinking matters most. So the person without a buffer isn't just financially vulnerable. They're making every financial decision with a partially occupied mind. They take the first job offer because waiting feels too risky. They can't negotiate salary because they need the income to start immediately. They avoid opening bills because the anxiety of the unknown is preferable to the confirmed bad news. They make short-term decisions that cost them long-term because the long-term feels too abstract when the short-term is on fire. This is what economists call the scarcity trap. And $1,000 is roughly the threshold where the trap begins to loosen. Not disappear, loosen. A $1,000 buffer doesn't solve financial stress, but it creates just enough breathing room for your brain to shift from pure survival mode into something resembling strategic thinking. And that shift, as small as it sounds, changes almost every financial decision that follows. Here's how it plays out in real life. Without the buffer, a $400 car repair is a crisis. You either drain whatever savings exist, put it on credit, borrow from someone, or defer it and hope nothing gets worse. Every option has a cost, either financial or relational or both. And the stress of navigating it consumes energy that could have gone somewhere useful. With the buffer, a $400 car repair is an inconvenience. You pay it, you're annoyed, you move on. The event doesn't cascade. It doesn't trigger credit card debt that takes months to unwind. It doesn't create a conversation you dread having. It just costs $400 and ends. The financial difference is $400. The life difference is enormous. Now, here's where the $1,000 rule gets more interesting, because the math is only part of the story. When you save $1,000 for the first time and keep it saved, something happens that has nothing to do with the account balance. You prove something to yourself. You demonstrated that you can accumulate capital, that you can delay gratification, that you can make a plan and follow through on it. That money can exist in your account without immediately being consumed by something. This sounds soft. It isn't. Identity is one of the most powerful drivers of financial behavior. The person who has never had $1,000 saved often doesn't think of themselves as someone who saves money. Not consciously, but the behavior pattern reflects an unconscious belief that money is for spending, that saving is for other people, that whatever comes in will eventually go out. Saving $1,000 and keeping it breaks that pattern. It creates evidence that contradicts the old belief. And evidence is the only thing that actually changes deeply held beliefs about what you're capable of. This is why financial coaches who work with people coming out of debt or poverty focus obsessively on the first $1,000. Not because it solves anything materially, because it solves something psychologically. It creates a new data point. I am someone who has savings. And that identity shift, once established, makes every subsequent financial decision slightly different. The person who thinks of themselves as someone who saves money makes different choices at the margin. They pause before an impulse purchase because it conflicts with the identity they've built. They feel the pull towards protecting the account rather than depleting it. They start experiencing the satisfaction of a growing balance rather than the anxiety of a shrinking one. None of this is dramatic. It's all happening at the edges of daily decisions, but edges compound. Now let's talk about what the $1,000 actually protects you from, because most people underestimate this. The average unexpected expense that derails someone's finances is not catastrophic. It's not a medical emergency or a job loss. It's a car repair, a dental bill, a broken appliance, a pet emergency, a traffic ticket, a flight home for a family situation. These events cost between $300 and $1,500. They happen to almost everyone at least once a year. And for the roughly 60% of Americans who report they couldn't cover a $1,000 emergency from savings, they represent genuine financial crises every single time. Each crisis has a cost beyond the immediate expense. Credit card interest if it goes on plastic. Late fees if other bills get delayed to cover it. Stress that affects work performance, relationships, sleep. The downstream effects of one $800 emergency can easily double or triple the actual financial impact once you account for all of it. The $1,000 buffer doesn't prevent the event. It prevents the cascade. And it's the cascade that keeps people financially stuck, not the original expense. Think about what a cascade looks like in practice. The car breaks down. You don't have the money, you put it on a credit card, the minimum payment is $35 a month. That $35 was going toward your electric bill. Now the electric bill is short. You pay a late fee. The late fee hits right before rent is due. You're $50 short on rent. You borrow it from a friend. That creates an obligation that affects the friendship. Meanwhile, the credit card balance is accumulating interest. A month later, something else comes up and the cycle deepens. This is not a story about irresponsibility. This is the mechanical reality of operating without a buffer. One unexpected expense triggers a chain reaction that takes months to fully unwind. And while you're unwinding it, you're not building anything. Every financial resource is going toward cleanup instead of construction. The $1,000 stops that chain at the first link. Now let's talk about getting there, because this is where most advice falls apart by being either too vague or too aggressive. The standard advice is to cut lattes and avocado toast until you've saved $1,000. That advice is both mathematically correct and practically useless for most people because it treats the savings problem as a spending problem when it's actually a systems problem. Here's what actually works. First, make the $1,000 a non-negotiable line item, not a leftover. Most people try to save what's left after spending. There is almost never anything left. The system has to run in reverse. Money comes in, $1,000 target gets funded first. Everything else gets allocated from what remains. This requires an immediate automatic transfer on payday before you see the money. Even if it's $50 a week, even if it takes 5 months, the amount matters less than the automaticity. Once the transfer is automatic, it stops requiring willpower. And willpower, as a long-term financial strategy, is a terrible plan. Second, keep the $1,000 somewhere slightly inconvenient, not buried, not inaccessible, but not sitting in your checking account where it blends with spending money and gets quietly consumed. A separate high-yield savings account with a slightly different login is enough friction to prevent casual depletion while keeping it accessible when you genuinely need it. Third, define what the $1,000 is for before you need it. This sounds unnecessary, but it's not. People raid their emergency fund for non-emergencies because they never clearly defined what an emergency is. Write it down somewhere. Car repairs, medical bills, essential home repairs, job loss coverage, everything else is not an emergency. A sale on something you wanted is not an emergency. A social event you feel pressure to attend is not an emergency. Defining the rules in advance removes the negotiation that happens in the moment when you're tempted. Now, here's the conversation nobody has about the $1,000 rule, and it might be the most important part of this entire video. Once you have $1,000 saved and you keep it saved through the first real test, something changes in how you see the next financial goal. The $1,000 felt impossible before you did it. Then you did it. And it revealed that saving money is actually something you're capable of. Which means the $3,000 emergency fund feels less impossible. Which means the $10,000 investment account feels less fictional. Which means the financial future you've been treating as something that happens to other people starts feeling like something that could happen to you. This is the compounding effect that nobody puts in the financial calculators. Not interest compounding, identity compounding. Each proof point builds on the last. Each achieved milestone makes the next one feel more attainable. The person who has $1,000 saved is measurably more likely to have $5,000 saved 2 years later than the person who doesn't. Not because of the money, because of what saving the money proved. Now, I want to come back to what I told you to hold on to at the start. The $1,000 isn't the destination. It's the proof of something much more important. It's proof that you can make a decision about your future and follow through on it. That you can resist the pressure of immediate spending in favor of future security. That money can accumulate in your account and stay there. That you are, in fact, someone who builds things rather than someone things happen to. Jason with $847 and Jason with $1,200 have the same job, the same salary, the same life. But one of them is trapped in a reactive financial existence where every unexpected event is a crisis, and one of them is starting to build something. The gap between them is $353 and a decision. You already know what decision that is. The question is when you're going to make it. Save the $1,000 first, before the vacation, before the upgrade, before anything else. Not because it solves everything, because it proves everything, and proof is where everything else starts. Just a reminder, I'm not a financial advisor, and this video is for educational purposes only. Any results depend on your own decisions. I'll see you in the next one.